Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another edition of the EFL London show. I'm your host, George Daggers, and joining me this week, just Ned Holmes. Ned, how you getting on?
Yeah, good. Thanks, George. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I had my second jab, so I'm recovering from that, but I'm all good. Other than that, you've been on holiday, looking rested up for this show?
Yeah, sunned myself in Spain actually, just to get prepared for this week's EFL London football show.
Nice one. I'm sure that is exactly the case. Right, let's move on from that. Let's get straight into some talk. We're talking Fulham first of all. The Cottagers won 4-1 over Birmingham City earlier this week. Obviously, they lost at the weekend at Blackpool. It was a bit of a surprising result. They bounced back very nicely against the Blues at St Andrews, recording a 4-1 victory, send them top of the Championship table. Ned, I want to talk about Nathaniel Chalobah, actually. For me, he was the most impressive player on the park, really, for Fulham, of which, in fairness, there were many. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, it was a hugely impressive one, wasn't it? I think it always looked like that was going to be some signing, really. But this early to produce a performance like that and a really well-rounded performance, like, with his energy, he's popping up everywhere, breaking up attacks and stuff like that. But the way he drove with the ball, I think, gives Fulham another dimension. And I think it was 2 assists he got as well. One of them driving into the box, brought down. Another one, the ball through to Harry Wilson. So, I mean, you've got to be really, really excited if you're a Fulham fan. But the rest of the Championship have got to be sort of thinking, bloody hell, did the Fulham squad need to get any stronger?
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I mean, you look at their midfield options now, and Chalobah sort of come in and, well, effectively knocked everyone else down the pecking order a little bit. Do you think it's probably fair to say that Chalobah and Seri are the 2 strongest midfielders Fulham have at the moment? It seems to be under Silva at least, but then you look at players like Harrison Reed and obviously Tom Kearney's got to come back in. Josh Onomer's there. Do you think it's probably those Seri and Chalobah that are the 2 to beat at the moment?
Yeah, they definitely seem to be the people in possession of the shirt at the moment. And after the midweek performance, I guess you can't really have any arguments with that. I mean, it's shocking, really, that Reed, the thought of Reed not playing a huge part this season, given that he really established himself as one of their most impressive players in the Premier League last time, and really sort of showed himself to have top flight quality. And obviously Tom Kearney, club captain, I think, still, and just a huge influence on that team. And we all know what he can bring at Championship level. So, it's certainly a good issue to have for Marco Silva. And I think a lot of managers in the Championship will be wishing they'd have sort of one of those 4, not all 4.
I think as well, it showed a lot of character that's in that Fulham team, because obviously got a bit of a surprising result at the weekend, losing at Blackpool. And, Birmingham started really well this season, obviously at home. St Andrews, they're right up for, potentially getting top spot themselves had results gone their way, and obviously had they won. And, Fulham have turned up and put 4 past them before Troy Deeney had his chance, obviously scored from the penalty spot. What have you made of sort of the Fulham character that's being shown under Marco Silva? It looks to me like they're a very together unit already, and, I think they're going to take some stopping, aren't they, in terms of promotion race?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo that. And I do wonder whether the loss to Blackpool was sort of, in a strange way, the perfect thing for them, after such a strong start to the season and having brought in quite a few new players and to a squad that was playing Premier League football last year, maybe a reminder of just how difficult the Championship can be and that you can't underestimate anyone was the perfect thing for them, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Okay, let's keep in West London. Let's move to QPR's result at Bournemouth. Rangers' unbeaten run in the Championship has come to an end. 2-1 defeat at Bournemouth. They went 2-0 down, did manage to get themselves back into it in the second half, as they so often have this year. Sam McCallum getting the goal, but unfortunately for them, that they couldn't salvage anything from it. Obviously, in previous weeks, we've seen play the likes of Barnsley, Reading, and get draws from losing positions. I guess, though, Ned, the point you'd have to make is, as good as QPR look, and they do look like playoff contenders this year, eventually, this was going to happen where they've made a slow start again. Well, in fairness, they made a fairly quick start, but didn't get the goals, and they've fallen behind. And you can't keep doing that and expecting to get results.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, eventually, when you keep making things more difficult for yourself, as QPR seem to be doing this season, in terms of, not necessarily always making a really slow start, but not capitalising on things early on and going behind other teams. When you come up against a team with the quality of Bournemouth, you're going to get unstuck. I think it's important to, losing the unbeaten start to the season is a blow, but it's important to remember a lot of teams are going to lose away to Bournemouth this year. That's going to be a difficult place to go, and things seem to be clicking for the Cherries at the moment. But the thing with QPR at the moment is, while there have been such improvements under Warburton, they remain a really open team that are going to give up other teams a lot of opportunities. It was a sort of uncharacteristic error from Rob Dickey for the first goal, but I think it's 10 goals they've conceded now in the Championship this season. That's more than anyone else in the top half of the division. So it is a strange one, really. And I guess the starting slow thing is something that maybe I'd look to put to Mark Warburton on the weekend if they continue to do that against Bristol City.
I mean, I think you make a good point as well. The goals conceded is an area of concern. And obviously, Warburton changed it, didn't he, midway through last season? Obviously, he was using a 4 at the back, 4-2-3-1. And QPR weren't really getting the rewards their performances deserved. So he's changed this 3-5-2. And, defensively as well, that they were a lot better towards the second half of the season. Do you think he might be tempted to try and tweak it again a little bit? Or, it could just be the case. There's obviously some new personnel in that defence, like Moses Odebajo. He obviously didn't play at the week earlier this week, but then Sam McCallum did. So there's new faces in and around that defensive lineup. Do you think it's just going to take a little bit of time for them to find some rhythm?
Yeah, I think exactly that. I can't really see Warburton, hitting the panic button anytime soon, looking to tweak things around too much, to be honest. It's difficult to see, what exactly he could do to try and shore it up even further, given he's already playing the sort of 3 centre-backs or 2 centre-backs and a midfielder, if you're believing what Reading have been saying about Johan Barbe. But I don't know, really. I think it's just a situation where they go give it time to just, fuse together, as you say, a couple new faces in that defensive unit.
Okay, well, we'll get to their game against Bristol City later on in the show. Let's move to Millwall's result from earlier this week. And it was another draw for the Lions. That's their 4th of the season. They're joint top in terms of draws in the league this year. Obviously, there's several sides up there, but Millwall one of them, and it's a trend that hasn't really changed from last year. 0-0 against Swansea. Ned, what have you made of the way it's going for Millwall? It's a little bit of a frustrating start really to the season now, isn't it? Obviously, 4 draws on the board. They really need to find a way to start turning these 1-pointers into 3-pointers, as they did for last season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they seem to be being plagued by that similar issue of not being able to find the killer blow in games, really, or see the games out when they do go ahead. I think Gary Rowett certainly hasn't been helped by injuries, a string of injuries. Danny Ballard, the latest guy, I think he was in hospital last night, so hopefully he's okay. But it's the same old story. Yeah, I mean, they were hoping, I guess, that Afobe and Ojo would be the goals that they so lacked last season, but it's not quite clicked yet. Last season I think they finished 11th, scored less goals than every team that finished above them. So clearly scoring goals was something that they needed to change. And yet this season it's 7 in 7. They're on course to score 6 goals fewer than last season. It's difficult because I think we've all been praising the progress that they've clearly been making under Gary Rowett over the past few seasons. But at the moment that they're just struggling to get going. I mean, it's a tough one for them, really, because he will look at that and feel that, I know he said it's their first clean sheet of the season. He'll look at that game and feel that they did a lot right, and that if they'd have just taken a few chances, got that win, then that would have been 3 points to them and momentum on their side. But yeah, it's a difficult one for Millwall because it doesn't seem to be it's one thing that's going wrong in terms of they're not finding those goals to kill off games. It's tough to know how exactly to change that at the moment.
Yeah, certainly looking for a little bit more spark than they've had so far. We'll have to see how they get on. Let's touch on one final result from earlier this week involving clubs from the capital. And to use the phrase, they come like London buses, pretty apt. Sutton United obviously waiting for so long for not that long in fairness to them, but long enough for them, I think, to get to get a win on the board in League Two. Obviously got one at the weekend and followed it up earlier this week with a 1-0 win over fellow promoted side Hartlepool. Ben Goodliff with the goal. Ned, it's just really good to see Sutton looking at home now in League Two. They've moved themselves well away from that relegation zone, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, I did feel they were a little unlucky to be where they were before these two wins in terms of performances against sort of points earned. But I think you inadvertently hit on it there. They're looking at home, and that return home after being away from their home stadium because the pitch was being redone has been massive for them. 2 wins at home, 6 points on the board, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see them picking up points because clearly that they're a team that they had a lot of success last season. I think often teams that are in and around the relegation zone, if they've been around there at the bottom of, battling out in the bottom of a division for a few seasons, they almost don't really know what it's like to go on these long winning runs. That's not the same for Sutton. They were dominating a lot of the National League last season, and you'd hope for their sake that with these 2 wins behind them, they can sort of keep the ball rolling.
Sure, it's nice as well for them to get a result against their fellow promoted team. Obviously, Hartlepool started the better, I think it's fair to say, in League Two, but a real confidence boost for Sutton, and we'll see how they get on in the weeks to come. Right, speaking of weeks to come, let's look ahead to the weekend's action involving the 7 London clubs in the EFL. Let's start with QPR v Bristol City. Ned, you're going to be there. QPR obviously looking to bounce back from their defeat at Bournemouth that we've already touched on, and Bristol City probably looking forward to being on their travels again because obviously they've been struggling at home for so long, and obviously that late goal they conceded against Luton earlier this week denied them a much needed victory at Ashton Gate. Are you looking forward to this one, and how do you see it going?
Yeah, really looking forward to it, actually. I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether the defeat against Bournemouth will serve as the sort of motivator to get QPR going early on. I think in a weird way, even though they have been strong away from home this season, in a weird way, Bristol City might be the perfect team for QPR to play in the sense that they are a team this season that have proven that they basically will give you chances to score goals late on, and QPR are the team that we've seen come back time after time. So if I were a betting man, I might be looking to sort of put something on QPR to come from behind in this one. Because City have been strong recently. They, for me, lack a decent, not decent, that's harsh, but a consistent goal scorer. It could be a case of if City can take their chances, which they're going to get against QPR, then they could cause a real problem. But I'd actually back the R's after that defeat to really bounce back in style.
Okay, let's have a score prediction then, Ned.
I will say 2-1 to QPR with a late winner.
Okay, that should be entertaining for you to write about, although it may ruin your match report if it's a late goal. But I can also see QPR bouncing back. I think they might just edge it. I'm going to go 1-0. However, let's move to Craven Cottage. Fulham host Reading. I'm going to be there for Football League World. Fulham, of course, coming into it on the back of a very good win over Birmingham City, 4-1 earlier this week. And Reading coming into this match as well on the back of a decent win, 3-1 against Peterborough United. Tom Deli Bashiru impressing most of all for the Royals. I think, in fairness, Ned, it's probably fair to say that Fulham are going to go into this still pretty strong favourites, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think other than maybe West Brom, it's hard to see any team coming up against Fulham and Fulham really having to sort of change the way they play or do anything differently. There's so much quality across the pitch and particularly up top. And I do worry whether that Reading defence is really going to be able to deal with what Fulham have got up top.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting game. Let's have your score prediction for that one.
I'm going to go 3-1 Fulham.
Yeah, I fancy Fulham to get 3 as well. I think it might be 3-0, though, in favour of the Cottagers. The final Championship game involving a London club sees Millwall take on high-flying Coventry. Coventry sitting 4th, going very well, beat Cardiff earlier this week. I guess the question is, Ned, is how much do you think Millwall would give for someone to have someone as in form as Victor Gyökeres in their team at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I saw Coventry play QPR a little while ago, last month. I thought in the first half he gave Dickey that honestly I hadn't seen Dickey not struggle but sort of tested like that really after sort of this unblemished start to the season, and he's obviously in fine form. And as you say, this one could come down to whether Millwall can get the likes of a Phobe or Ojo back in time for this one. I'm not sure whether either are going to be available, but that could be massive because, as you say, Coventry have made a fantastic start to the season. They know exactly what their identity is, and they're firing in goals at the moment. And Millwall, on the other hand, going forward, it's tough to see them sort of getting one. So they certainly look in a bit of trouble.
Certainly do. Okay, we'll see what happens there in the Championship. Just quickly, what's your score prediction for that Millwall game?
I'm going to go 2-0 Coventry.
Okay, I'm going to go 1-1. I fancy Millwall to get another draw. We'll see what happens there. Right, let's move into League One. Charlton Athletic, I was there last weekend for their loss at home to Charlton. I have to say the first half was particularly poor. Nigel Adkins got a fair share of boos at half time. Things did pick up a little bit for Charlton in the second half. Jonathan Lecco got himself on the score sheet, obviously making his return on loan from Birmingham City. I do, however, think that there's plenty of work to do for Nigel Adkins and Charlton right now, and it needs to start obviously sooner rather than later. They're away to Wycombe this weekend. Ned, what do you make of the chances at Adams Park?
I think it's a difficult one. It's going to be a real difficult game for Charlton. Wycombe won both their games at home this season, and Charlton, as you say, that it was a stronger performance in the second half, but with that pretty torrid first half display, seemed to sort of lose all the momentum they built up for their sort of semi-international break. I would love to see Adkins' side bounce back, but I think Wycombe are just going to have a bit too much quality for them at Adams Park.
Yeah, I think that could be a very particularly tough test for the Addicts. What's your score prediction for that one, Ed?
I'm going to go 2-1 Wycombe for this one.
Okay, I'm going to go 1-0 to the Chairboys for this particular fixture. Finally, in League One, AFC Wimbledon host Plymouth. Wimbledon going very nicely in the third tier. Do you think they should be confident of a result against the Pilgrims? Obviously, Plymouth are going pretty nicely as well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's 14 goals that Wimbledon have scored now in their last 3 games. I think they're the top scorers in the division now. Plymouth got goal scorers as well, but they've been sort of pretty tight at the backs. So it's going to be an interesting sort of matchup, that one. We talked a lot about Fulham, and we're pretty lucky. I'd say Fulham, QPR, Wimbledon. We've got some pretty exciting teams, London teams in the EFL this season, and Wimbledon could edge the other ones in terms of sort of pure entertainment value. And I'd back them. They're rolling at the moment. They might concede goals, but they seem to back themselves. Mark Robinson seems to back his team to outscore the opposition, and I think we're probably going to see that again. Okay,
I'm going to go for 2-2 draw at Plough Lane between these two. What do you reckon for this one?
3-2, I reckon, for me, to Plymouth. Okay. I mean, to Wimbledon even.
Oh, nearly threw Wimbledon under the bus there, Ned. Yeah. All right, brilliant. Let's move into League Two. Both Sutton United and Leyton Orient are heading west this weekend in League Two. Let's talk Sutton first of all. We've got a tough game away at Exeter. Ned, obviously we've spoken about Sutton getting 2 wins on the bounce, but it's going to be a tough trip against a seasoned League Two campaigner in Exeter City. What sort of case can you make for Sutton getting a result here?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to sort of look at Exeter and say they might not seem as strong as we've seen them at times in previous seasons, but they're still a really difficult side to beat. And this is probably arguably the worst time to play them all season on the back of a 4-0 win against Scunthorpe. But that said, Sutton United are high on confidence, and as we said, they're a team that stormed through the National League last season, and they know how to win games. That's the long and short of it. That they've got to go and sort of back themselves against Exeter. But I do think it's going to be really tough. If it were me, I think taking a point and keeping the momentum going is a great scenario for Sutton. And if they can come away this weekend with sort of 7 points in the last 3 games, I think that's massive.
Yeah, I think they'd be really delighted with that. I personally, though, do see the Grecians just edging this one out. I'm going to go 2-1. What do you reckon, Ned?
I'm going to go 1-0 Sutton to grab that point, actually.
Nice, I like it. And as for Leyton Orient, really, really going well in League Two at the moment, just outside those automatic spots. They're at Bristol Rovers, who are not having as productive a campaign, sitting down in 22nd in the 4th tier. Ned, I think it's probably fair to say Kenny Jack and his men will be pretty confident they can go to the Memorial against Joey Barton's men and get a victory.
Yeah, but what I would say is, Rovers have actually, I think they've won their last 3 at home. I think that's their record. And while Orient, while they've been really strong at Brisbane Road, is that what it's still? Anyway, the Brea Group Community Stadium or whatever it's called, they have struggled a bit on the road. So I think it's certainly not going to be an easy one for them. But you'd have to say that they've got more quality and a wily manager like Kenny Jackett, that they should be able to take all 3 points as long as it's, as long as they start strongly for me. I think if they can go ahead, I think that Rovers team, I think a few heads will go down.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I'm going to go 2-0 Orient for this one. What's your prediction?
I'm going to go 3-0 Orient.
Oh, you
two in the first half.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, that'll be a great result though for the O's if they can get it. Right, that brings an end to this week's EFL London Roundup show here on Football League World TV. Hopefully those watching at home or wherever you are watching it have enjoyed it. Ned, thank you very much for joining me as well. Enjoy the weekend's football. Enjoy QPR v Bristol City on Saturday. We'll be back next Thursday with the London Roundup show. If you can subscribe to us on Football League World TV on YouTube, that'd be brilliant. It'd be much appreciated. But whatever you do when the football does come around this weekend in the capital, enjoy it. Hopefully your teams get a result, and we'll speak to you next week.